Hello all. Hope you're all having a good day so far. Uh, I'm happy to be the host of uh, Ella and Lucy's talk. Their talk title is Exploring Global Research Opportunities in Natural Hazard. So they are going to share with us their experience from our EU to their internship and study abroad. And this webinar is a part of NHERI GSC workshop and mentoring program. By joining us, you can be a part of a big community of graduate students and faculty members who work in natural hazard research, from earthquake engineering to geotech and coastal and wind engineering. And we can learn a lot from them. And also, we have a bunch of fundings that you can use to attend the conferences and workshops, and also webinars like this and technical talks. So if you have not already joined our community, you can use the link or the barcode to become a member of NSF NHERI GSC. It's totally free, and we will be happy to have you in our team. I'm going to introduce our speakers today. Ella is a Master of Science student in coastal and marine engineering, Common Plus programs, prestigious program in coastal engineering in Europe. And Lucy is a senior in environmental engineering in Cal Poly, and right now she's an RA. And the organizers of this webinar are me as a chair of workshop and mentoring, and Robin Nelson. And again, thank you for being here. And now Ella is going to share her screen, and hopefully we can be on time. And after that, Lucy will share her experience, and you can ask any question you have from them. So I'm going to stop sharing. Ella, now you can share your screen.
Okay, that should be pulling up. In a moment. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ella, and like Ali said, I am currently a master's student studying coastal engineering. I'm doing this in Europe completely for free. And if that is something you're interested in either coastal engineering or research opportunities abroad, then I can tell you more about that. Let's see. So just to give you a bit of overview on my presentation so you know when to tune in for what you're interested in, I'll start with a little bit of background about me and then my research experience during my undergrad and then also my industry experience. And finally, I'll give you an overview of my master's program and the research opportunities that it offers. Right. So as you can see, my name is Ella. I am currently getting my master's in coastal engineering, but before that, I am from Dallas, and I moved to Austin to study at the University of Texas, where I got a bachelor's in environmental engineering and I minored in sustainable energy engineering, and my specialty was in water resources. And I'm passionate about sustainable coastal solutions. So based on these interests, let's see. I was able to tailor my undergrad degree a lot because UT has a very flexible environmental engineering program, and I got to take a lot of different electives. And so I was able to do a coastal engineering elective, and there the professor sent us a flyer for an REU, and it was at Oregon State, and Oregon State has the largest wave flume and a really cool directional wave basin, and just overall a very cool research facility. And I really wanted to go there and learn more about coastal engineering. So I applied and got into this REU. And so NHERI, if you're not familiar, stands for Natural Hazards Engineering Research Initiative. And so they sponsor this REU program for undergraduate students, and theirs is a 10-week fully funded research internship, and you get to specialize in an area of natural hazards engineering. And our area at Oregon State was coastal engineering, specifically looking at tsunamis. So that's where me and Lucy first met, and we got to do this internship, and we were mentored by Dr. Pedro and Ali, who you just heard from. So our research project there was on the impact of solitary waves on a concrete column embedded in sand. And we were looking at the scour of the sand around the column based on the impact of the waves. And this is kind of what our experiments looked like. So we did LiDAR scans, we had pressure gauges on the column, and we also had wave gauges and acoustic Doppler velocimeters that measured particle velocity. And so I individually looked at the pressure distribution of the waves on the column, and then we were all able to present our research projects at a symposium at the end with all of the NHERI students from that year from across the country, and we all met in San Diego and presented our research. So this was the first time I got to do individual research. And then I also was able to do research during my bachelor's at the Johnson Environmental Turbulence Lab at UT. So that was under Dr. Blair Johnson, who specializes in turbulence-driven environmental flows. I got to work on a paper called Characterizing Visual Structures in a Buoyant Plume, and this got me exposure to a bunch of different techniques and experimental methods that I'd never looked at before. So I got introduced to laser-induced fluorescence. I see on that picture there, we had the black light on and we had a fluorescent dye in the solution that we were using, and then we shined a laser at it to make it vibrant. We also worked with ADV data, and I learned how to analyze it on MATLAB. And this was funded as well through the Academy of Distinguished Alumni program. That's a program at UT that I applied for outside of my bachelor's. And then I also was able to complete a thesis during my senior year. This was supervised by that same professor, Dr. Blair Johnson, and she was wanting me to see if turbulence as an individual factor had an effect on the degradation of clothes. Because there's a lot of research out there that has found that our clothes, when they're washed in the washing machine, have tiny little fibers that come off of them. And those fibers are often captured, but sometimes they're not captured by the filters on your washing machine. And they're also sometimes missed by the filters that wastewater goes through. So ultimately, fabric fibers from your clothes end up in the ocean. And this is bad, especially in this day and age where so many of our fabric textiles are synthetic and made out of plastic. So then you have all these tiny plastic microfibers in the ocean. That's bad because this is a form of microplastics that can affect the ecological makeup of the ocean, as well as eventually end up in humans because we eat fish that eat these microplastics. And there's a lot of research out there about the negative impacts on human health of microplastics. And you can look into that on your own if you don't believe me. But I was specifically looking at the solo effect of turbulence on fabric. And so I got to do a ton of investigative experimentation because no one that I could find had done that before. They had mainly done tests in the laundry machine because a big factor of degradation is friction. But I was looking at if and how much turbulence by itself has an effect on fabric. So I got to do a lot of investigative experiments. I got to try a lot of things that didn't work, and it took a lot longer than I expected. So I figured out a way to do it, and then didn't have enough time left in the year to really run enough trials to get tangible results. But overall, I just got to learn a lot about the research process, and I got to write a paper about this and present it. And this was a really great experience because it once again gave me the opportunity to do a individual project, which is something that I would speculate is very advantageous for you if you are looking to apply to a master's, especially in Europe, because in Europe it's quite common and almost always the case that during your bachelor's you write a thesis, and that's not necessarily the case in the US. My bachelor's thesis was completely optional, And I do think that it would look good to schools that you show that you are able to write a completely individual project and take something from start to finish. This also I received funding for through the Goyette Research Endowment. So next, I also got to see coastal engineering from the industry side when I interned for a company called Moffett and Nickel, which is a firm that specializes mainly in coastal projects. And during this time, I got to learn about a bunch of different techniques and issues and projects that you face in the coastal engineering industry. One of the main things I did was shore protection projects. So any structures or marine terminals that go up on the coast need to take into consideration any storms or waves generated by wind or deep ocean swell or vessels that are passing. And they need to protect their shoreline from this. So there's a lot of calculations that go into this and a lot of techniques that you have to do to account for what waves you might experience. Some of the ways that I got to learn about to estimate wave height are through a model called ACES, where you are able to approximate that if there was just a single depth and you just average waves from at that depth for your given shoreline area, what the waves would look like. And then Mike is another computer model that I got to work with a little bit, which takes into consideration the actual bathymetry of the seafloor when creating a wave model, and you're able to generate a spectral wave model. And then I also did just a ton of stuff in GIS and looking at different data sets on GIS and generating some figures through that to create flood risk hazard assessments. Overall, this was a really cool opportunity to see types of projects that then I am now learning all of the background and calculations and why we do these calculations and the linear wave theory that goes into this in my master's. So my master's is called the Coastal and Marine Engineering and Management Program. This is an Erasmus Mundus joint master's, and it's a collaboration between 5 universities across Europe. And this was something that I was looking into because I got the chance to study abroad during my bachelor's, and I met a ton of different people that were from all over Europe that were studying abroad in the same place as me. And they kept telling me about this, that they were all doing Erasmus. And I was like, what is Erasmus? So Erasmus is a program established by the EU, and it basically allows different European students to apply and receive funding to go and study either 1 year or 1 semester at a different European country at a different school. And the whole point is to promote collaboration between universities and cultural exchange. Under this larger umbrella of Erasmus, there's the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters Program, which is international masters where 3 or more institutions across 3 or more countries in Europe come together to create a master's program, such as mine. And anybody in the world can apply. The only stipulation is that you have attained your bachelor's degree or an equivalent level of education. And oftentimes they are funded. And a lot of times that funding can help cover your travel, the visas that you need to acquire for the countries, and sometimes even a living allowance. So to give you more of an overview of the specific program that I'm doing, it's called COMEM, as I said before. And so this program is divided into 3 different tracks or specialties. And during the first semester, the students of all 3 specialties go to the same place. And we are currently in Norway because I'm in the first semester right now. And then for the second and third semester, we will split up and you will go to either Italy, Spain, or France. And then your final semester, you will go back to one of the 3 previous universities that you have visited and write your thesis. So one of the perks of this program is that if you're accepted, tuition is completely free, which is a novel concept coming from the US. And so that already makes the cost a lot more manageable. In addition, you can either be accepted on a scholarship basis or a self-funded basis. If you are self-funded, then you are responsible for covering costs of your visa, your travel, your rent, and your food all on your own. If you receive a scholarship, it is a living stipend that, in my opinion, covers the majority of your base living expenses. It depends because all of the different countries that you go to will have different costs of living. For example, next semester, I'll be in Barcelona, where average rent is a lot higher than it is in Norway. So that's something I have to consider. In my opinion, the amount that they give you is similar to working a part-time job, maybe like 20 hours a week, which is something that I would do during my bachelor's. And so this frees up a lot of time for me. And I wouldn't say it covers 100% of my expenses, but if I really wanted it to, and I really like wanted to make it work, I think that I could. But I am also working part-time while I'm doing this because I like to travel, basically. And so, yeah, so funding wise, getting the scholarship is really helpful. And then the three different tracks, I'll dive in a little deeper to these, but the three different tracks or specialties. Track 1 is called Future Ports and Waterways. So that's looking at ports, harbors, and navigational channels, especially through the lens of climate change, because those will have to take that into consideration in the coming years. Track 2 is my track, Coastal Environmental Engineering, and that's looking at the actual environmental mechanics that are going on in coastal areas. And then track 3 is Shore Management, which looks at coastal engineering from a bit more of a broad perspective and takes into consideration environmental, social, and economic factors. So a little bit more in depth on the structure of this program. It's 2 years long and 120 credits. So as you can see, so there's the 3 tracks, and each track for semester 1 will start in Norway. For the most part, you take the same classes. You all take port and coastal engineering, and you all take Arctic and marine engineering. Track 1 and track 2 have the option to get a little bit more into ice action. And track 3 and track 2 also can do an environmental psychology class. But for the most part, a lot of the coursework is very similar. During the second semester, tracks 1 and 2 go to Spain, while track 3 goes to Italy. And in Spain, it's a lot about coastal processes and sustainability, zone planning, etc. And the main difference is that track 2, it has the option to participate in a multidisciplinary coastal engineering project. Then track 3, that's in Italy, is specializing more in fluid, shore protection, and tidal dynamics. Next, over the summer between your 2 years of school, there is a workshop that you attend in France. For tracks 1 and 3, this is obligatory, and for track 2, it's optional. The topics vary based on your track, and as of now, I believe the topics are for track 1, port engineering, for track 2, offshore renewables, and then track 3 is in shore management. This is a 10-week, I believe 10 weeks, workshop in which you get to have lectures and tutoring that support you and a group to create a project that ultimately is the proposal for a real coastal engineering project. And then at the end, you present it, and a lot of different firms have representatives come to see you present. And so it's a really good opportunity to build professional connections and potentially build a connection that could get you either a job or internship. Speaking of internship, part of the program requirements is that you are recommended to do a 4 to 5 week minimum internship at some point during your coursework, and the time of period that this would make the most sense is over the summer. So that's something that you are responsible for finding, but there's a lot of help that the schools can give you in finding this internship, especially if you attend the workshop. Finally, once the summer's over, you go to your 3rd semester school. So for tracks 1 and 3, this is in France, and for track 2, this is in Italy. Tracks 1 and 3 are looking at hydraulics and dredging. Track 1 is a little bit more structural emphasis, while track 3 looks at more of a shore management emphasis. And then track 2 will be in Italy, studying more advanced fluid mechanics, marine biodiversity, and water and wind energy. Finally, for the 4th and final semester, you are able to go back to one of the 3 schools that you have already visited to write your thesis. And so for the thesis, you are able to go to any of those schools. The way that it works is that each school will release thesis topics that professors are interested in having a student research. And if you either have a professor that you have built a connection with, a school that you really want to return to, or one of the topics particularly appeals to you, you can apply for the topic. You also, if you have an idea for a project that isn't offered, but you are exceptionally interested in. And I think as long as you find a professor that wants to supervise it, you could come up with your own individual thesis idea. The schools offer a broad range of natures of theses. You could do a numerical modeling or a field experiment. You could do a lab experiment. As far as I know, each of the schools has very good experimental facilities. But depending on where you want to go, there's different things you could specialize in. For example, if you wanted to look into Arctic and ice engineering, you probably wouldn't do that in Italy. You'd probably want to go to Norway to do that. One thing that's cool is in Norway, they also have a campus in Svalbard, which is exceptionally far north. So if you are interested in true Arctic engineering, there's opportunities to do your thesis there. Another main thing that stands out is that the university in France partners with a lot of industry and firms. So if you are interested in maybe doing a project that partners with a firm directly or indirectly, then that's probably a good opportunity there. But overall, you can look deeper into the different things that each school offers and while you're visiting them or just by contacting the people at the different schools. So this is just an idea of some of the past topics, just so you get a sense of the nature of thesis that people write in this program. And you can come back to this perhaps on your own time. I'm not going to read these all to you, but just to give you an idea of the types of things that people study. And overall, if you're interested in doing anything similar to me, this is my advice about it. Funding is there if you look for it. I have gotten funding for my bachelor's degree, for my undergraduate research internship, for my thesis that I wrote during my bachelor's, and for my master's, because I sat down on my computer and looked for it for hours and hours and hours. Nobody's gonna like come knock on your door and offer you funding for something that you're interested in, but I have found that if you are willing to work hard and do a ton of research, that there is funding. And a lot of times funding is available and doesn't get taken because nobody applies for it. So it's there and you just need to take advantage of it. Another thing that I have learned is that you can't be afraid to ask for whatever you want. There is professors that would love to hear that you are interested in their research, or if there is just like anything that you want, there's almost never any harm in asking. For example, when I first got into my master's program, I didn't get into the track that I had ranked first. And I wasn't sure if I still wanted to do it because I didn't know if I wanted to do the tracks that I didn't want to do. I was going back and forth, and I ultimately decided to just reach out and ask if there was any way they could just fit me into the other track. And I thought that there was no reason that they would say yes to that because they had like quotas and numbers. But they did. And so now I'm doing the track that I wanted to do because I wasn't afraid to ask. And it's way better to be uncomfortable for the 5 minutes that it takes to ask a question than it is to be uncomfortable for your entire life because you never ask the questions you want to ask. Going along with that, I would recommend always being open to anything because sometimes opportunities present themselves in ways that you would not expect. Like, I would not have expected to be moving to a new country every semester and being across the world from all of my family and loved ones if you had asked me that a year ago. But this opportunity presented itself and I decided to give it a chance. And now I'm in Norway and it's going pretty okay. And my last piece of advice that I feel like I have started to absorb being here is that you are on a unique timeline and you do not have to adhere to someone else's timeline. I think personally, I felt a lot of pressure in the US that I needed to follow a very strict timeline of going to high school, getting my bachelor's right away after that, either getting a job or starting my master's right away after that, and then immediately getting a job after that. Which is totally fine if that's what you want to do and you're motivated to do that. However, while I've been here, I've met so many different people that are on completely different paths. Like they've gotten to take gap years and travel or had work experience in completely different fields. There's people that are in my program right now getting the same master's as me that have had experience in completely different areas and are just now getting into this like several years down the line. And that's amazing because you can do this at any time and there's no made like any timeline that you think there is there. If there's something you want to do, don't think that it's too late to do it. Just do it is basically my advice. Okay, that is all that I have to say. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I think actually you can ask them after Lucy's presentation.
No, they can ask now if you have any
okay.
questions. Yeah.
Ask your questions now. Okay. I think maybe there was one in the chat. So do you think this method could be adapted for industry? Based on my bachelor's thesis. So do I think this method could be adapted for industry testing of textiles before they reach consumer? Yes. In theory, yes. I think more so like it would be applicable to maybe thinking of different ways we could wash clothes that degrade them less. Because yes, this is a great way to test clothes, but at the end of the day, they are still going to go in a washing machine. And a washing machine has a lot of other factors, mainly friction with like the machine itself and with other clothing garments. So yes, I think this method could be one way of testing before textiles reach the consumers, but I don't think it would replace testing in a real washing machine. I think that's the only question, unless anybody else has anything.
So I think you covered most of the questions. I just have one question. So what are the requirements like for this program? Like in case of the academic background or like research background, GPA, stuff like that. People can, who can apply for this program and get into it and get the scholarship? Like especially what's the requirement for that scholarship beside the program?
So the scholarship itself has no separate requirement than just admission to the program. I think you are applying for the scholarship at the same time as the program. It's not like a separate application. And the only real stipulation is that you have your bachelor's degree. I think that technically there's a way to demonstrate an equivalent experience level to a bachelor's, but I'm not super sure what that is. But overall, you just need to have a bachelor's. There's technically a credit requirement for math, but any U.S. masters will have met that, or U.S. bachelors will have met that math requirement. Other than that, like there's admission requirements, like you have to submit letters of recommendation, you have to submit a transcript, but there's no cutoffs. There's no strict, like, you need this GPA. There was nothing of that sort. And then this website here at the bottom that I've linked, and I think Robin sent in the chat, does have all of the admissions requirements for things that they would like to submit. But overall, there isn't any cutoffs or things that you have to meet other than having your bachelor's. Does that cover everything?
Yeah, I think Samir has a question.
So what motivated me to go to Europe when I have best universities and sort of funds? Okay, good question. I can answer this in two parts. I was considering getting my master's in the US. For me, I kind of was starting to feel like a little bit stuck and like I wanted to do some traveling and seeing the world. So I was really motivated to travel after I finished my bachelor's, and I was actually considering taking a gap year to travel. And then when I heard about this program, I thought that maybe it would be a good mix of being able to travel while continuing my education. And the reason why I was okay coming here as opposed to getting my master's in the US, when yes, the US does have excellent universities, is just like life experience. And I met with a couple of different professors. Like I had a professor that was originally from Spain that moved to the US. And I also talked with my thesis supervisor and professor that I did research with during my undergrad, Dr. Johnson, she had gotten her master's in the US, but during the course of it, she did an entire year exchange in Spain. So I got a lot of opinions from her and another professor at my school, also Dr. Pedro Lomanico, that I worked with at Michigan State, about whether or not universities were more or less prestigious or would give me a better education in Europe. And for the most part, they said that you're never going to get a bad education somewhere. Like any university, especially these ones in Europe, which are some of like the most prestigious, is going to give you a great education. The main difference is the research style. I do think that if you are looking at getting a master's or your PhD, one of the pieces of feedback I received from professors was that sometimes in Europe, research is a little different than the way it works in the US. Like, for example, my master's, I'm only going to spend one semester writing a thesis, while a lot of times in the US, you spend 2 years taking classes while also writing the thesis. So yeah, that's the main reason. For me, I just thought it was a really good mix of getting a great education while also being able to travel and while also being a lot cheaper than the US, because there was no tuition. And even though I do believe that there is funding in the US for your master's, I think a lot of times the type of funding that you get with your master's involves also having to work as a TA. And the funding that I receive for this is completely like not based on anything. Like I just get this living allowance. I don't have to do any extra hours of work, and I have so much free time to travel and to see and focus on my classes. And that was a big appeal to me. Do you come to your professor that you're interested in with a thesis idea already, or do you come up with one with an advisor? So, okay, the way that the thesis works, you only have to come up with your own idea if you really, really want to. If you are not sure, or you have an idea of like the area that you're interested in, but you don't have a specific topic, they release a huge list of topics that professors want students to research. And if one of them appeals to you, you can just choose that one. If you really want to, because you have a super unique idea and passion on your own, then you can come up with that and find an advisor, probably one of the professors that you enjoy taking class with, is how the thesis works. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ola.
Cool.
Very
Thanks,
informative. Yeah. So thank you, Ola. It was very good. We go to our next speaker, Lucy, and she's going to share experience, mostly of her internship in Germany. Welcome, Lucy. You can share your screen.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Hegenderfer, and I'm currently a fourth year studying environmental engineering. Let me just get this up really quick. Okay. All right. I'm currently a fourth year at Cal Poly, California State Polytechnic, and that's in San Luis Obispo on the West Coast. I'm originally from Seattle, and like Ali mentioned, I was in Munich, Germany this summer. I was actually an agentic design research assistant in collaboration with the Munich Center for Digital Sciences and AI with Hochschule München, University of Applied Science. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it looks like to do research abroad or to have an adjacent internship abroad. But first I'm going to tell you my background. So like Ella, I was placed at the Oregon State University OH Wave Research Lab in the summer of 2024. That is funded through the National Science Foundation NHERI REU program. Ella did a great job of telling you about our project background and the scour evaluation, as well as the wave surface structure interaction. My job on the project was to analyze the wave surface elevation and wave surface breaking behavior using the wave gauges. I also led the frame build for a portion of our data acquisition system, the MTAs, and that helped customize our equipment for experimentation. And then alongside Ella at UCSD by the end of the summer, I presented and published my research findings. Currently, I am working as a Sacramento Delta Tidal Entry Research Assistant on top of my paid undergraduate research position in an environmental engineering lab on campus. I also do field work for them, but that's what I do to get paid. And then this is what I do for fun and research. And that's at Cal Poly under Dr. Talke. This Delta tidal entry is really important because the Delta is experiencing the largest sea level rise in California state. And these records go back all the way to the 1860s. So a lot of my research consists of digitizing these tidal records for the surrounding areas, as well as tracking the tidal fluctuations from the sea level rise. And then I also perform quality assurance checks on the entries to make sure that all the numbers are correct before we transform them into metadata. And then later on in this year, I'll be compiling and configuring the metadata for preservation and open source publication. All right. So a little bit about my project. My summer project was a part of the Cal Poly College of Engineering SERP program, which stands for Summer Undergraduate Research Project. Originally, it was called Sustainable AI Agents, with the brief, a comprehensive examination of the environmental impact of AI technologies and the development of AI agents with the focus on sustainability. So I knew as an environmental engineering major, I had the comprehensive examination part down, but I was really concerned about the development of AI agents part. Nonetheless, I went ahead and emailed the supervisory professor, Dr. Kerfis, expressing my interest in the topic, and he reached right back out, invited me to meet with him at his office hours and his senior design student, Bella Boulay, the next day to discuss more about the project and what my role would look like as an environmental engineer. So even though I wasn't sure that this was something I wanted to do, because it was so far out of my comfort zone, I said yes. And I actually walked to a corner of campus I had never been to before to meet with them the next day. I sat down with Bella and connected with her about the environmental impact cost analysis she had been doing for ChatGPT 3.0. And I actually went through a couple different variables that she was missing with her in her preliminary research, like the water usage energy of converting hydropower and that water consumption, as well as the difference across the nation of power usages and the different makeups from coal, hydro, wind, all of that stuff. Because that makes up a lot of the makeup of the environmental cost as well as the energy usage. So we talked about that a little bit and continued to speak on it, even though I wasn't part of the project yet. And then she actually ended up advocating for me to be a part of the team at the end of the day, and I was notified of my acceptance in the late of May. And my project was really unique in that it was more focused on a collaboration between Hochschule München and Cal Poly. Cal Poly has had a previous long history of exchange programs with this university, frequently sending summer school students or even fall quarter students. My professor, Dr. Kerfis, was scheduled to give a guest lecture for the summer on sustainable AI agents. And he wanted to bring both Bella and an additional SERP student along with him to kind of develop a research publication in collaboration with the sustainable AI efforts that were going on at HM in Munich. So that was really the basis of the project. And once we started talking to the faculty at HM, we realized we had a little bit of a funding issue. I was partially funded through the Cal Poly College of Engineering as a SERP student. I had $3,500 for my summer salary as a part-time employee. However, that didn't cover any of our travel expenses. Flights during the summer are pretty expensive. So we came up with the idea to get hired on as research assistants with HM as well to provide additional travel funds and supplementary funding, basically. But that turned our 2-week summer course with Dr. Kerfis into a 2-month-long internship researching at MUCDI. So this came with additional funding issues and housing struggles. However, we were able to apply to the BACATech Fund, which is the Bavarian California Technology Center, which helped cover research costs and supported housing stipends for both Bella and I there on the right. So housing in Munich was very difficult in the fact that it is a large European city, so it's kind of expensive. And also apartments and sublets in the summer and just year-round really offer 6-month minimum leases. And being there for 2 months, our only option was really hotels or hostels. We ended up working with the Munich HM summer school coordinator to hop on to the exchange students summer housing at a hostel for the first 5 weeks of our program. And then for the last 4 weeks of our program, Bella and I were on our own for housing. So we ended up sharing a hotel room for the last 2 weeks. And then for the first 2 weeks, and then the last 2 weeks, we actually independently solo traveled. We split up, which was really sad, but it did allow me to go visit Ella for 10 days in Norway and see what she was up to, which was very fun. And we're also very fortunate enough that we had faculty mentors who allowed us to work hybrid and understood that the funding situation as well as the housing was not necessarily ideal. So they helped us make the most out of the summer for sure. In terms of cost of living for Munich and just being abroad in general, it's a little bit more than you would expect to pay out here on the West Coast in California or even Seattle, where I'm originally from. But I would attribute that mostly to the fact that Bella and I's accommodation didn't really allow us to use the shared kitchen as often as we would have liked. So we did eat out a lot more than we typically would have living in an apartment or on our own, like at school or at home. Overall, I was about, I would say, 60% funded, but I'll go into this a little bit more later. So getting to my project, this beautiful abstract on the right, this is our final project, and it ended up being the environmental impact of LLM inference. So like I talked about, our big idea was the collaboration between the two universities. We had Bella's previous senior design project, which was looking into proprietary models or cloud-based LLMs and trying to quantify those with the lack of reporting from large corporations and the lack of metrics. So we were doing a lot of assumptions. And then we had Maximilian, my boss in Munich at MUCDI. We had his previous metrics on local large language models that he had run on his A100's graphic card at MUCDI. And so we had 14 different models, that we researched and looked through and quantified, and he was looking at the CO2 equivalent emissions while Bella was looking at also CO2 equivalent emissions, but also water consumption. So our project basically was a culmination of all of that. We wanted to put the proprietary and the local models together in a evaluation tactic that whatever you had, whatever model you were working with, you could understand the CO2 equivalents and water consumption, so the total footprint of your model, which hasn't really been done before, and that was the niche that we were holding on to the entire summer. So our project overview, we didn't really have an end goal in mind. We know that we wanted to bring together a publication. We wanted to get it out somewhere. We wanted to make this accessible to everyone. And Maximilian was working on separate publications that summer, and he actually came across the Triple AI student abstract submission, which had a deadline that worked with our time frame in Munich. We actually submit on September 15th, so just about 10 days ago. We're still waiting to hear back, but fingers crossed. And additionally, this helped us have more of a timeline, helped build milestones, and really addressed what our research would look like. We had formatting that we had to adhere to. We had keywords and other submission requirements that really helped shape our research paper from here on out. At the beginning, it was a lot of literature review, like just poring over the new publications that were coming out all the time. And this like triple AI submission really helped us narrow in our research project, as well as help us stay accountable. So one thing that made us really successful in working together while we were all over the place, my supervisory professor, Dr. Kurfis, ended up going back to California after the first about 3 weeks of our stay abroad. So we had weekly meetings where we discussed what we had previously done since we had last seen each other, as well as what we wanted to accomplish before the next meeting. I had really great faculty, professors who helped me with what I needed, where I was lacking. They helped guide me and give me direction as not a computer science individual. And this is where the cross-disciplinary research part really came in. I really had to play to my skill set and my previous technical writing experience working with NHERI. I developed a lot of great publication skills in that, as well as I had been working as a grader for Cal Poly for the past 2 years. So I had a lot of administrative experience, and I actually ended up running admin for the entire project all summer. This looked like me setting up shared libraries on Zotero, and making team accounts with Overleaf, and teaching myself Python because I didn't know what the Overleaf was looking like at all. So there was a lot of self-learning involved in places where I had gaps, as well as playing to my strengths and, maybe taking a back seat at times, but also helping where I could with literature reviews, finding new publications. And at the end of the day, I was actually able to break down our 13-page report into a 2-page submission. So what you see on the right here is probably a fourth of what was written. And yeah, it was just very taxing as an editor and a revision process, but I'm actually very proud of what we were able to produce. My boss, Maxie, actually asked me if it was ChatGPT, and I said no. But yeah, so that definitely helped me develop a lot more technical writing skills, as well as learning how to communicate openly and honestly with my faculty members. Naturally, there were a lot of hiccups while I was abroad, mostly the funding struggles. As I was hired on as a HM research assistant, transferring from a German bank account to a US bank account has been a huge struggle. So I'm still working through those and navigating with those, but building those strong relationships with my mentors has made it easy to communicate openly with them and tell them what I need, like when I was struggling to pay my credit card bill this summer. So that, developing those connections and earning that trust is really important. We also had a lot of frequent publications this summer. Sustainable AI seemed to be a little bit of a hot topic, and ChatGPT 5.0 was actually published 1 month before our publication was due. So we actually had to pivot and add an entire new section about how to address that and what that meant, because they had a lot of new sustainability features incorporated in that. And we were concerned that our paper was actually null and void because of it. But we stuck to our niche, and it ended up working out great. I also struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, being the only environmental engineer on a team of 5 to 8 computer science and computer engineers all summer. A lot of times I didn't understand the language that they were using, but I was able to overcome this by asking a lot of questions, reading and rereading my publications that I was going over, as well as not being afraid to ask what I considered stupid questions. I also used my professors a lot and asked them a lot of questions, as well as Bella. She was a great resource for me all summer. And again, building that trust with my mentors really helped me find where I could improve, what skills I needed to develop, and also building my computer science repertoire out. So that was really nice. And then additionally, asking for what you need from your professors and your supporting faculty. Like Ella said, people really want to help you. So if you ask for help, they will. That's what I found. I've never been told, no, that's a dumb question, or, I can't help you with that. There's nothing I can do. It's more like if they can't help, they can show you somebody who can help. Additionally, my colleagues in Munich were very excited for me to be there. They really wanted me to explore and enjoy Munich. And it was just as important that I fall in love with Germany as it was to produce a quality publication for them. So having an open dialogue with them and being able to, take long weekends to see Bavaria or the rest of Germany or go up to Norway with Ella. It was all about having that open communication with my faculty members. They also had great recommendations of what to do and where to go and what to see. And I was very lucky. It was a great time. So in terms of getting out there, finding the program is not necessarily always the most important thing. I think it's connecting with faculty instead. In my case, I didn't necessarily apply to an international program. It just happened that my professor was a foreign, he was originally from Germany and he had a lot of foreign relations. And so he was the one who really pushed me to take the 2 months and to go abroad. And so I think it's all about leveraging your local network as well as your mentors network and see what's out there, ask around, don't be afraid. Again, connecting with your faculty is super important. I think in these abroad and just in an internship in general, but especially when you're in a foreign country, it's really important to develop agency and be responsible for yourself. I learned a lot while I was abroad about myself as an individual, but also myself as a researcher and what it takes to produce a quality publication, to do a thorough literature review, to shop in a foreign language even, so it's just all about being responsible for yourself, taking that initiative to put your best foot forward at all times and to make the most out of every situation. Also working with your mentors makes advocating for yourself really easy. That open and honest dialogue is really important. Not everybody's experience abroad looks the same. Mine definitely won't look the same as yours or won't be as structured as Ella's. But it's all about using your resources and saying yes. Try to be yourself, try to be outgoing. But there will be a lot of flexibility involved. Things change drastically, often, frequently, especially when you're actually out there and abroad. And just be open and receptive, and see what the world has to offer for you. So that's all. Yeah.
Thank
Any
you, Ella.
questions? Cool.
So I have one short question for you. So you had the experience of being in both US and Europe as an intern. So which one you learn more from, or what's your preference and to whom you refer or recommend to have an internship, in REU or in Europe, if they have the chance to do the both of them?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, my two research experiences were extremely different. At Oregon State, it was very much lab-based. I had my mentor on call in office with me at all times. I also had a cohort of Ella and Kama with me. And I had an entire NHERI network to access. So in terms of like starting out as a researcher and starting my own publication, that one had a lot of support around it. And it was fully funded, which was amazing. Whereas my previous research this summer, which I'm actually still continuing now, was a lot more independent. It was much less structured, and I think it depends on what skill set you want to learn. Oregon State was much more lab-based, whereas my time in Munich was a lot of literature review and just building out a publication. Um, so I think it depends on what you want. As like for my first research experience, I think Oregon State was fabulous. NHERI was amazing. The NHERI REU was wonderful. Gave me what I needed in terms of support and weekly meetings with Robin, which I miss every day. And like starting to build those publication and individual self-study skills. Going abroad was completely different. I learned so much about myself just as a person. And it was a lot more demanding and taxing in terms of organizing and coordinating and funding. But if you have the chance to go abroad, I absolutely would recommend, even if it's just for a study abroad, because of how much you learn about yourself and um, kind of like Ella was talking about earlier, just life experience. But also, it's very interesting to see how, um, academics work abroad and how research works abroad because you start to realize that there's more than just the States. Um, so I think that there were both a lot of benefits to both programs. I think as an undergraduate, I would recommend NHERI, but as, a upperclassman or even a master's student, I would recommend going abroad.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Lucy.
Thank y'all so
Yeah,
much
that
for
was-
for both being here. Sorry, I'm going to jump in just because it's great to see both of y'all and hear so much about all of the experiences you've had since you had the RU program. And thank you, Ollie, for putting this together and being an amazing mentor while they were in the NHERI RU program. It's exciting to see all that you've done. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all again. So if there is no question, like it's the end of meeting. It was very great again. Thanks, Ella, Lucy, and Robin for helping me. And thank you all for attending this webinar.